present today. Her session, Leadership Mindsets, How You Think is More Important Than What You Know. So her bio is just fantastic, and I had to cut it for time, but she has so many fantastic accomplishments. As an executive coach and founder of the Sparks Group, Jessica's passion is helping leaders and teams develop the capacity, not just the skills they need to be personally and professionally successful in the face of ever-increasing change and complexity. Jessica lives in Charlotte with her family. She serves on the board at Myers and Chapman Construction and Catawba Riverkeeper and volunteers for skills with Queen's University. She's a member of Women Executives of Women's Impact Fund. Jessica was named one of the 50 most influential women in Charlotte, and the Sparks Group has been recognized as one of the 50 fastest growing private companies in Charlotte. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jessica Bronzer.
Good morning, thank you. Can I get the clicker from you? Awesome. I think Annie needs to add stand-up comedian to her list of things that she's into, right? You're so funny. You also totally stole my thunder because I was going to do the good morning thing. So I will spare you another good morning. I am just so delighted to be here with you. Again, my name is Jessica Bronzer, founder and CEO of the Sparks Group. I came in yesterday to hang out and get to know you all a little bit. Where are my snack friends? Where are the people who were teasing me about my assertiveness around the appetizers last night? You guys are a hoot. I also really like a good hors d'oeuvre, so there we are. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about leadership. So this is, I would say, essential to what your work is, but also a little bit adjacent, right? I'm not going to be talking specifically about marketing and business development, but I'm going to talk about how you lead yourself, how you lead your teams, how you influence in your organization. And the way that I want to get into that today is to introduce or start from this place of maturity. So I want to invite you to think about this word maturity and how you would define it for yourself. If I were to take two people, let's say it's me and my 16-year-old son, and I were to allow you to talk to us, you probably would guess on age alone, and I were to say, talk to us for a few minutes, and then I want you to tell me who you think is more mature. You would be able to do that, wouldn't you? You might be able to do that even without talking to us because you're going to see a 16-year-old, but my point is that you inherently already know what I'm going to be talking about today, because essentially what I'm talking about today is leadership maturity. So while I'm going to be introducing a new framework and lots of new ideas to you, I want to start from this place that you have lots of experience with this idea already, and you have some intuition and some discernment around it. So we'll start there, and then the next question is, why do we care about maturity? Why would we even talk about leadership maturity? And I want to introduce VUCA and Bonnie. Who has heard the term VUCA before? Has anyone heard that? A few hands going up? Okay, so this is a term that actually comes out of the US military in the 1980s after the Cold War ended as a way to describe what the nature of warfare was in the post-Cold War era. Stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So the military was saying, this is what we think the new world stage looks like. This is kind of the nature of warfare. And the business world said, yeah, us too. This is what organizational life is like. This is what it's like to try and make money in the world and have a successful business. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. So we have been sort of living in and dealing with a VUCA world for 40 years now, or what we've been using this term VUCA for 40 plus years. After the pandemic, Bonnie came in, B-A-N-I. This one comes from a researcher at the Institute for the Future in Palo Alto, California. And he said, VUCA is great, and we're still dealing with that. But now in the pandemic, post-pandemic world, we are also dealing with Bonnie. Things are brittle, people are anxious, things are nonlinear, and they are incomprehensible. So we have these two acronyms that are meant to describe the nature of things out in the world. How many of you would agree that VUCA and Bonnie at a high level are at play? Like these are things you're dealing with? Yeah, a lot of hands going up. Great. There is not an organization that we work with, there is not a company that I talk to that does not having this experience of being like, oh yeah, VUCA and Bonnie. So if it's helpful to you to have these terms to describe what you're experiencing in your work and in your marketplace, there you go, you've got VUCA and Bonnie. So what are the implications of this for us as leaders? There's an organization called Lectica that has done research on this, and what they have found, and what you're seeing on this slide, is that we focus in on complexity in particular. Out of all of those words in VUCA and Bani, complexity kind of gets named as the headline for all of it. And Lectica says that the level of complexity that we experience as leaders in our organizations is increasing to such a degree that the gap between what we can bring to the table and what level of complexity we are expected to deal with is increasing. So what you notice on this slide is that we start with supervisor, we go all the way up to senior leaders, and the gap between what the senior level leader can bring and the level of complexity that they are expected to wrestle with is big. It's the largest gap. So Robert Keegan at Harvard calls this being in over our heads, that we are being asked to deal with a level of complexity that really exceeds our ability to match it or meet it. And we see that that trend just increases as you move up in the ranks of leadership. So we all kind of think, gee, it would be great to be in charge, it would be great to be promoted, I know what I would do if I was running this joint. Yeah, it's not such a panacea at the top of the house. It just gets more and more complex and more challenging. And leaders at that level are even more in over their heads, as Robert Keegan would put it. So like, oh my gosh, what do we do with all of this? That's where the leadership development imperative comes in, right? So what we have is a world that is getting increasingly VUCA and Bani, increasingly complex, and we have leaders who, the higher we go in leadership, the harder it is to meet that, to leverage it, to take advantage of it, to manage through it. And so that creates the leadership development imperative. This is why leadership development is so important, no matter what your role is, no matter where you work, no matter what you're doing, your ability to see and navigate these dynamics is essential to your success, So you may be saying, well, Jessica, okay, you've painted a really nice kind of scary picture about the state of the world and what we need to be doing. What do we actually do about it? So I'm going to posit to you today, I'm going to introduce this idea of vertical development as the answer, part of the answer to this complexity challenge that we're facing. What is vertical development? Vertical development is about how we think. It's about how we look at a set of circumstances and make meaning from it. So you can see on the slide here, the ability to think in increasingly complex and interdependent ways. It's about the worldview or the lens that we use to look through the world and how that changes over time and over experience. You can think of it as your worldview, right? So I want to invite you to think about yourself as a child. Maybe you have really strong memories from being 5 years old. Maybe you really remember being 13. Maybe you remember being 16. And think about some of the things that you believed and some of the ways you behaved because of what you believed at that age. And ask yourself, do I still think that way now? Probably not, right? So psychologists used to believe that our psychological development stopped by the time we were 18 or 21. I don't know about you, but I just cringe and laugh when I think about 21-year-old Jessica still walking around like, thank goodness she's not still here, right? That'd be kind of a disaster. How many people agree? Like, thank goodness your teenage self is not still running the show, right? Yeah, right? And that's essentially what we're talking about. So when I said earlier about maturity, that you already know what this is. You have lived it. You have seen in yourself how your own worldview has shifted as you have grown up and become an adult. And the reality is that psychological development does not stop when you're 18 or 21. It actually continues on into adulthood. And that's what vertical development is, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's talk a little bit more about how to think about vertical development. And my favorite analogy for that is a smartphone. There's probably 300 smartphones in this room, right? Everybody's got one. I can take that phone and I can add apps to it, right? I like to play Words with Friends. I like to play Wordle. I do my banking on my phone. I look at the weather. It's a flashlight when I need it to be, right? We can add so many apps to the phone to make it do a whole host of things, right? And that is incredibly valuable to us. However, what happens when you keep adding apps to the phone? It's eventually going to slow down, right? Going to slow down. And if you were going to resolve the problem of the phone slowing down and not able to keep up with all of the complexity that you're putting in there, what would you do? You would upgrade the operating system, okay? So I want to introduce this idea that horizontal development is incredibly important and is the acquisition of skills and competencies, okay? That's like putting apps on the phone. I can make the phone do a lot of different things. It can have a lot of different skills, just like we as human beings can, right? My teenagers are learning how to drive. That's a skill that they have been working on acquiring, right? I could go become a professional in the AEC industry. I would have a whole lot to learn if I was going to do what you guys do, but it's a skill I could acquire, right? And so historically, the development industry, the leadership development industry, a lot of the training that you have probably received falls into this horizontal bucket, right? Most of the time when we go to learn something, we're learning a skill or a competency. What does not get as much attention, and arguably is more important, is vertical development. What does it actually mean to upgrade the human operating system? What would it mean to grow your capacity as a leader? And that's what I want to invite you to think about and learn about today, right? You are all excellent at learning a new skill if you have to. How many of you have been climbing the AI learning curve, right? AI has burst onto the scene. It has a huge impact on what I do, what you do, and we are all trying to learn the skill of AI. There's a lot there, right? But what does it mean to use AI in an ethical, effective way? What does it mean to make decisions in your organization or in the marketplace about the proper role of AI potentially? That's where we move beyond the skill of the tool and into the meaning making around it and how we're going to manage this new thing that has emerged onto the scene that is frankly adding a lot of complexity, right? It's helping a lot and it's making things really interesting and complex, okay? That's just one example. So the headline here is that horizontal development is about what you know, and vertical development is about how you think. Both of them are important, but I would argue that as you continue to grow in your career, or if you want to grow in your career, vertical development becomes more important the further you progress along in your career. The horizontal piece is going to be pretty easy to pick up, right? We're all learning AI. We have to. It's happening, right? That part is not necessarily so concerning, okay? So I want to this is an eye chart. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, and you're probably not going to be able to read a lot of that, but I would encourage you, this is in the handout on your table. There are some empty tables with handouts on them, so if you want a copy, please feel free to get up and grab one off an empty table. This is also in the guidebook app, as Annie said, so that you can reference it and I think print a copy for yourself there when you get home if you would like to. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I'm going to walk through each of these stages on the successive slides, but I just want you to see the overall model that I'm introducing to you on one page, so you're welcome to reference that. And I would invite you, as I walk through these different stages of vertical development, is to think about where you might be. Maybe think about yourself and maybe pick one other person in your work life. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a direct report, maybe it's your best friend at work. Pick somebody else, and I want you, as I talk about these stages, to think about where might I be most of the time? Which of these stages of development might be most indicative of where I am in my own developmental journey? Does that sound good? All right. So the first stage here is called the self-protecting stage. So many of you are probably familiar with this. Almost everybody in this room will have come into and grown out of this stage. Think about, I've told you I'm parenting teenagers. They start to come into this stage, right? Young adults would kind of be here age-wise. And this is where my worldview is that I am highly identified with my own wants and needs. I am very close to what I want, what I need, and I am going to move to get that pretty directly, without much consideration for what you may think, what you may want, what you may need. There's really not much of a capacity, if you will, for me to take on the perspective of somebody else at this earlier stage of development. So what does this look like? I just think about my teenagers and young adults all day long, right? Like they have a curfew, they break it, they drive too fast on the road, they don't realize that they're a danger, they're putting other people in danger maybe. These are some of the things that can happen at this stage. Where is this stage good? This stage is really great in the work environment in sales. So those of you who've got a business development role, this actually has some benefits to it because people, when we are coming from this stage of development, we like to win. We'd like to get what we want. And so if I'm interested in closing the deal and I need to win, then this way of looking at the world can be very helpful. This is also super helpful in emergencies. One of my favorite examples of self-protecting, many of you may be too young for this, Rudy Giuliani after 9/11. He stood on a pile of rubble at the Trade Center and he said, we are gonna be okay, we are gonna figure out who did this, it's gonna be, he took charge and he led the country, as it were, at that point in time, through that emergency, through that crisis. So people who have a center of gravity, we call it center of gravity, I'll explain that in a minute, at self-protecting are really good in sales, can be really good in emergencies, but that, from a leadership perspective, it's not gonna be as strong of a stance because if I'm only interested in getting what I want, probably not gonna be acting on behalf of the collective very well, right? One of my own personal examples, so one of the things about vertical development is even if you have grown through a stage, and I'm going to venture to say that almost everybody in this room has probably done that, right? This is like less than 1% of the adult population. But even though we've grown past it, it's still inside of us. So we don't ever leave anything behind us completely. We don't leave it in the past permanently. It's still a part of us. So this comes up for me when I'm flying. I got on a plane to come here yesterday from Charlotte, North Carolina. I have my roller bag that I want to get on the plane, and I really like to have my bag over my seat, either directly over my seat or across the aisle across. And so as soon as they call my boarding group, I am up, I am ready, I am going to get on the plane at the earliest possible moment because I really want my bag to be where I want my bag to be. I'm self-protecting, right? I want something, I believe I need something, and I'm gonna do, within reason, what it takes to get it. As soon as my bag is up in the overhead compartment, I turn into the more sophisticated, mature version of Jessica, who can turn around and be like, hi, do you need help with your bag? Here, let me help you with your bag. But not before my bag is taken care of, not before mine. That's an example of how self-protecting can live on inside of us, right? Does that resonate with anyone else kind of uptight about their, yes, thank you. All right, we have somebody vulnerable over here. I'm feeling kind of alone in my OCD about my suitcase. So that's self-protecting, okay? That's sort of our very first adult stage of development. It is inside all of us, but it is not very common as sort of a primary way of being in the world as an adult. But we see this a lot in young adults and older teenagers. Moving on to the next stage of development is called conforming. And this is where my identity is totally about the group that I'm affiliated with. So this could be, it could be a family of origin, could be a religious, could be like a church group. It could be a school. It could be my friend group. Again, we're sort of still a little bit, generally speaking, on the early side of adulthood. So this could be like, how our friends are so important in our teens and our 20s. That would be an example of conforming. This can also be organizations I think this is why college and professional sports are so profoundly popular around the world, is that we like to belong to something that is bigger than us. And conforming really speaks to that part of us. So when I am in conforming, this is about 10% of the adult population, by the way. So we're getting a little bit more common, a little bit more populous, but still not a large percentage of us having a center of gravity at this stage of development. So I am going to adopt the beliefs of the group. I'm not really going to have a lot of my own opinions or my own independent thinking about an issue because I'm going to adopt what the group believes or I'm going to adopt what the group leader believes. And so if you were to say to me, Jessica, what do you think about thus and so, I'm going to pair it to you sort of what the beliefs are or what the group leader is going to say about that, okay? So what does this mean from a leadership perspective? People at this stage of development are really wonderful at helping teams gel and stay together, right? So they don't want to rock the boat. They want to preserve the status quo. They want to preserve their place in the order of things in the group. And so they're not going to do anything that is going to change that or put that at risk, okay? So when people with this are on a team, they might be the party planners. They might be the one who kind of keeps everybody together, who helps smooth out conflict. There can be a really important role for the conforming mindset in teams and in organizations. On the flip side, the disadvantage is don't like change, right? That might put my position at risk. That might put my status at risk in the group. And so if there is a big change mandate, and who doesn't have one of those right now in this world, who is not trying to transform something or everything, then this can be a little bit of a limitation from a leadership perspective, right? Because I'm going to be wildly uncomfortable with change and transformation. I'm not going to want to rock the boat or change the way that things are now. So from a leadership perspective, somebody whose center of gravity is at conforming is probably going to struggle a bit with that. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, great. Again, only about 10% of the adult population has this, but again, it's inside all of us. So even as a quite middle-aged woman, I still struggle in my social group with a little bit of what we would call FOMO now. And that's the conforming part of me that says, I don't want to be left out. I want my role in my friend group to stay the same. I feel like I need to belong to that. I will also go to the mat with you over my alma mater, Michigan State. We have any, I know we're in the South, we have any Big Ten people in the room? Yeah, a couple, all right. Go big, if it's Big Ten against everybody else, unless you're from Michigan or Ohio State, and then down with you too. That's conforming, right? That's my team. You're either with me or against me, right? You're either with me or against me. All right, let's keep going here. Specializing. This is the most populous stage among the adult population. So I guarantee you, in the adult population, about 40% of us, this is our primary stage of development. So we are now in the zone where probably about 40% of us in the room are showing up in this mindset, in this way, okay? And for the rest of us, we definitely have a part of this. This is, even if it's not our primary place of being, it is absolutely right under the surface, a part of our wheelhouse. We can bring this forward with no issue whatsoever. So what is this all about, other than being a really cute baby wearing nerdy glasses? This is where my mindset is identified, my way of looking at the world is identified with my subject matter expertise, with what my knowledge, the thing that I have been trained to do or that I know how to do really well. So like I'm doing it today. I'm an expert on vertical development, and I am up here teaching you about vertical development. I am demonstrating today the specializing stage by sharing my knowledge with you and sort of standing up here as an expert, right? What is great about this? Well, we have a lot of nuanced, specialized work that has to get done in our organizations and in the world, right? And we need people who really know how to solve the problem and how to do the thing in order to do that, right? And even beyond this room, who are you all working with? Architects, engineers, project managers. You're working with people who are so deeply identified with their subject matter expertise, right? Right? I'm an engineer, I'm an architect. Like the amount of technical skill and sophistication that is required to do those jobs speaks directly into this way of looking at the world, right? So this is an incredibly valuable, incredibly important stage of development because it is where a lot of the work in our organizations happens and how it gets done, right? So this is me knowing the nitty-gritty, deep in the details stuff and being able to solve really gnarly problems that come up because I am an expert, because I have fine-tuned my craft and I've pursued continuing education. I really know what I'm doing when I'm in this stage of development, right? And there's tremendous value in that, tremendous value in that. What might the flip side be? So no stage is a panacea. This is not about higher and lower. We use the words later and earlier. It is really, and I'm going to talk about this, the fit between what you're being asked to do and where you are developmentally. So what might the disadvantage be or the limitation be of being so identified with your expertise and being so confident that you can solve a problem? It's that you're potentially not very collaborative. So if I think that I'm the smartest person in the room, then I'm not really probably going to make as much space for somebody else's perspective or input to be brought in, right? I'm just going to be like, you should do it my way. I know the answer. Let's get going. I don't really care if you don't get it. That can be the limitation of this mindset, is that it actually is not positively correlated with effective leadership yet. That's the next stage. Micromanagement can be an issue here, right? Because I don't trust that you're going to do it right, so I'm going to step in and make sure that it gets done correctly. So there can be some real limitations to this stage as well. This is the stage where we see a lot of people decide to or get gently suggested that they come to coaching because they are having trouble letting go of their smarts and their know-how to allow other people into the work, okay? And I had a really rough experience with this too. So before I started my business, I was director of change execution at Lowe's Home Improvement, headquartered in Charlotte where I live. And we had hired this boutique change management consulting firm to come in and do all this work for us. And I was the primary liaison to them. And they really had a teach you to fish, don't just give you the fish mentality. So I was learning the discipline of change execution and change management. And I loved it. And I'm sitting in this Fortune 50 company with 250,000 employees, and I am tagged as the expert on change management. And I wielded it like a hammer. I was, this is how you do it, this is the right way, you're not doing it right, here's the thing, So I had all of this knowledge that the company wanted me to acquire and was paying money for me to acquire, but I wasn't very good yet at bringing people along with me or helping to educate other people about change management. I see you nodding. The story is making sense. So I go to the chief strategy officer, who I wasn't quite working for, I almost was, blah, whatever, long story. And I say, I really want to get promoted, right? We've all had a version of this conversation or thought, what do I need to do to get to the next level? And more or less he said to me, you need to take care of the dead bodies behind you. He's like, you're so smart and you're so capable and you're you're doing what we're asking you to do, but the way that you're doing it is not great. It's not great. He goes, you're not collaborative. You're not able to bring people along with you, and people are frustrated. So he said, you need to go work on your relationships. Go work on your relationships. I walked out of there with my tail between my legs. I probably had half a dozen really good cries at my desk on the way home over the next couple of days. But I picked myself up and was like, okay, this is, if I want to get promoted and I want to move forward and I want to grow, this is the thing. And I started to meet people a little bit more in the middle. I started to say, okay, well, within the constraints of your business and what you're doing, here's how we could adapt the best practice or the right way to do the change management to make it work for you. I started to be a little bit more compromising, a little bit more collaborative. I went back to this chief strategy officer about 6 months later. He looked at me, he goes, I never thought I would see you in my office again. Like, I really was so hard on you last time. I was like, yeah, you were. I said, well, is it better? Is it better? And he goes, yeah. He's like, good job. You're turning things around. He's like, keep going, keep going. And so that story describes the transition from this very populous, very important stage, specializing, into our next stage, which is performing. This is the second most populous stage. So we had about 40% of the adult population in specializing, about 35% of the adult population here in performing. So between these two stages, we are at about 75% of the adult population just in these two stages, okay? So as a bunch of humans walking around on planet Earth, this is how most of us look at the world, okay? So what is performing? You can think about specializing as I'm the expert, I know the answer, and I can get it right, to let me have a bigger impact. Let me have a bigger impact by working with and through other people. So I go from being effective maybe over here in terms of knowing the answer, but efficient over here in terms of bringing other people along and collaborating and being able to build and lead teams. So teamwork comes online here, entry-level managerial capability comes online here. This is where we really see impact start to increase quite significantly, because what I realize is that even though I might be the smartest person in the room, I don't have to let go of that idea, right, from specializing, but I do have to realize that I'm going to have a bigger impact and be able to get more done if I work with other people. So performing is this stage of development that is most closely associated with what we define as successful in the Western business world. These are people who run really hard, they work really hard, the to-do list is a mile long, and they're never finished, and they're always running around. And they're highly productive. Who identifies with this? Who identifies with this, like, I am a human machine who can get a lot of stuff done? I should see more hands up, because it's like 35%. Yeah, there we go. Okay, all right. Good. So this is also a very wonderful stage, right? Corporate America loves this stage the most, because this is the one that we hold up as the pinnacle. This is the one that we hold up as the right way to do it, right? Work really hard, all that stuff. But I'm kind of harping on this working hard. You can imagine maybe what the limitation or the downside is here. Burnout. If I am never done with my to-do list, I'm never done. I never get to rest. And so one of the things that you will hear, this is also a very common place that people come to coaching. They show up on my doorstep and they're like, I'm so tired. I just want to go lay on a beach for like 3 months and turn my life off. Yeah, I hear you. But I'm never going to be done. I've realized that it doesn't matter how hard I work, I'm never going to be finished. I keep saying that when I get here, I'll be ready to take a rest, or when I get that thing done, it'll finally be better. But it's not. It's all a lie. I'm like, Welcome to coaching. Come on in. We can help you with that. So the real tension here at this stage is between what is sustainable, what is healthy, and still productive while not clobbering yourself. And so the thing that will move people forward is, from this stage, if people are going to continue to grow, is kind of that sense that, like, there's got to be a different way to live life than feeling like I'm on the rat reel or whatever, right? On the hamster wheel full time. Okay? So we have kind of peaked in our model. If we think of human development as a bell curve, like so many things are, we have kind of hit the top between specializing and performing, and we're going to come back down the other side to these later stages of development. These stages that I have just described are what we call the conventional stages of development, or the conventional stages of meaning making. Another way to think about them is that we are outside-in thinkers at these stages. What does that mean? That means that I am taking my cues about what's important and what success looks like from the outside, from my family of origin, from my bosses, from my friends, from my teachers, from the media, pop culture, right? You all in your marketing messages are probably using a lot of the messages of human development without even realizing it to try to sell, right? To try to market. And you're giving messages from the outside to your potential buyers about how they can be successful by hiring your company, right? As we transition to these next stages, we cross over into what is called the post-conventional stages, where our thinking shifts from outside in to inside out. So the best analogy I can give you is that imagine there's a board table of your life, and all of your important stakeholders are around that table. And you're there too, but you're on the side. If you're performing, or specializing, or earlier, you're on the side of the table. Your parents are there, your best friend is there, your boss is there, whomever, right? There's also a spot for social media probably, and whatever else you're consuming. And you want to hear from all of those people, all of those stakeholders. At performing and earlier, we're really not able to navigate very well the conflicts or contradictions that those stakeholders might offer to us. So for example, when I left corporate America to start my business, my mother said to me, I'm just so glad that you're going to spend more time with the boys at home. And I said, what do you think starting a business is, Mom? I don't think it's part-time. At least it's not, my business is not going to be part-time. And she was like, oh, I'm just so disappointed to hear that, really. And I thought, oh my God, I had to wrestle with the idea that I'm disappointing my mother by starting a business. But that's the feedback I was getting, right? So at earlier stages of development, it's really hard to weather that kind of, this is what this person expects me to do, and I'm going to do something different. That is the work that happens as you cross over into these later stages, where there is more capacity to say, I understand that that's your perspective, and I'm going to be okay making a different choice. So the metaphor, if I go back to the board table, is that as you cross over between performing and this next stage, internalizing, it is as though you stand up from your spot on the side of the table and you go to the head of the table and you take a seat there. All of those stakeholders are still at the table. You don't want them to go away. It's not about making them go away. But what it is about is being able to hear from, and you still want to hear from all of them, but there is more capacity now to weather the contradictions, the conflicting advice, especially if it is not what you end up deciding to do, or it doesn't align with your values. And that sort of encapsulates what the work is, moving from these earlier conventional stages to these later post-conventional stages, is that outside-in thinking to inside-out thinking, okay? So I just want to lay the foundation here. Internalizing, kind of as a stage, represents sort of what that board table metaphor looks like. I love the image of the matches getting ready to burn here, because this is the stage where some people kind of choose to burn it all down, if you will. In popular culture, we might call this the midlife crisis, okay? So this is where remember, we were at performing, we're potentially really burned out, we're feeling like the way we've been living and working isn't working for us anymore, and we want it to be different. And so what happens here is there's a fundamental sort of evaluation or examination or a reshaping of our values. So for example, one of my values is I actually really like to work. And I did not want to be a stay-at-home mom. That was one of the things that got really clear for me when I made my transition to start my business, even though I had parents who really thought that I should be in the house more. Right? That I should be a more present parent in that way. So internalizing, if any of you, about 20% of the adult population will move into these post-conventional stages. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I will invite you to reflect. You probably know if this is happening or has happened for you, where you have really questioned a lot of what is going on in your life, a lot of what is going on at work. You may have had that really strong desire to turn it all off and go take a break so you can just think and be. So that's the other distinction I would offer you, is that especially at specializing and performing, we are doers. There is so much power and value in doing, but we are actually human beings. And what starts to happen at these later stages is the being part of us says, hey, aren't I valuable just because I'm a human being? That my value is not actually attached to what I can produce or what I can do? How do I live life in a way that honors me as a human being and not just as a human doing? Okay? And that is the work that really happens at this stage, okay? This is probably the most difficult transition that we experience as adults, because it is not only that stage transition from performing to internalizing, but it is also that outside in to inside out thinking transition that's quite significant. So this one, most of these transitions can take place in a year to two if people are sort of in the work. This one might be 4 to 5 years of kind of making the shift here developmentally, okay? Let's move on to strategizing here. So I mentioned to you earlier that corporate America, Western business culture really values the performing stage, and we kind of hold that up culturally as the most effective, most valuable stage that somebody could be in, right? The research does not support that. The research says that, listen to these words carefully because this is a high bar. If you are interested in achieving and sustaining transformational change, this stage, strategizing, is the stage that can do that. Achieving and sustaining transformational change is, and only 5% of the adult population reaches this stage of development, which reinforces that leadership development imperative that I pointed out at the beginning, right? The world is changing faster and faster. The level of complexity that we're experiencing only grows. The mess that we have to deal with is just intensifying. And so it does require more capacity if we're going to meet it and leverage it. If that is what is being asked of you in your role, and if you have an interest in doing it. This does not mean that all of us need to work to get to strategizing. That's not what I'm saying at all, okay? But what is strategizing? Again, I just love this visual, kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about here. Strategizing, this is where our perspective just gets so much larger. So at every stage of development, what I can see and what I can navigate continues to grow. You can think of your sandbox or looking down on the ballroom floor, like the playing field that you can envision and imagine and play on continues to get larger with every developmental step that you take. At strategizing, the playing field is now quite large, and the ability to kind of see all these moving parts and all of these constraints and all of these circumstances and integrate all of it into a solution or a way forward that meets the needs of multiple stakeholders and is transformational really comes online at this place, really comes online at this stage, okay? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say here. I don't think there is. Again, not a lot of people at this stage, but there is a need for more of this in the world. So if you have designs to be leading a firm or you have designs to be making really big impact in the world, this may be of interest to you. What does it look like to grow the capacity to be at this stage? The last couple of stages that I'm going to talk about, I've consolidated them here because they get a little bit wonky at the end, are transforming and being. Less than 1% of the adult population grows to this late stage of development. People who we think may have a center of gravity at this late stage would include Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., potentially. Oprah actually gets mentioned as somebody who may be here, she may be at strategizing, she's somewhere post-conventional probably. At transforming and being, it's hard to describe. It gets a little woo-woo out here at these later stages of development. It is what we know is that people do not generally reach these later stages of development without some kind of spiritual practice that they are pretty essential to who they are, be that meditation or organized religion or what it could take any number of forms. But other forms of knowing, if you will, beyond the intellectual and the rational really start to come online and maybe even take precedence over the intellectual side of things, right? So intuition, faith, how I feel things in my body, we call that somatic, so somatic knowing, all become really important sources of information in addition to the intellectual for people at these late stages. There is also a sense that everything is made up. So the term we use to describe that is called construct aware. We become aware at these very late stages that we have basically created our world. We've made it up, right? We have these things called conferences, we have these things called jobs, we have these things called bridges, whatever. We've created all of it. And therefore we can make it a different way if we wanted to, right? So there's sort of a recognition about the temporality and the transparency of almost everything in the world, that almost nothing is concrete. Nothing is really, truly tangible. It's kind of a weird way of thinking about things. So there is not a lot of research on people at this late stage because they are all really different from each other and there are not a lot of them. So it's hard to sort of form concrete sort of generalizations about how this population shows up. But we do know that they are able to think forward in time quite far. They're able to think about historical perspectives really effectively. They are able to do surprising and sometimes almost magical things to bring people together who otherwise are not getting along. Those are some of the capacities that come online at these late stages. So that's a really quick tour of the vertical development model. Hopefully you've been following along. And here's the key question. I've kind of been stomping around this while I've been talking about it, but I wanted to put it on a slide. The key question is not how do I get to strategizing or how do I get to transforming and being, right? The key question is what is the fit between what is being asked of me in my work and in my life and where I am on my developmental journey? Is there a good fit? Or is there a gap in either direction? Am I really not able to see and navigate the complexity that I'm faced with? Or maybe I'm actually outgrowing the context that I'm in and I need to find a different context to be in. Okay? And I think this is a really important question. The one downfall of this model is that you could look at it and go, oh, I'm not where I need to be. I need to move further along. I want you to not think that. I want you to release that. And I want you to think instead about what is the fit between where I am, what's being asked of me. And then part two can be, and where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? And if I want to go to a place where there's more complexity, I want to deal with more VUCA, I want to deal with more Bonnie, what do I need to do to get there? So I want to pivot to that and talk about, hopefully I've caught your attention at this point. You're like, okay, I'm drinking your Kool-Aid, Jessica. Now what do I do to grow vertically? Teach me how to grow vertically, right? Is anyone in that place? Did I get anyone? I got a couple hands. All right, great. So I want to talk more specifically about the thinking capacities that are associated with vertical development, with vertical growth, okay? So the first one here, I've been saying this word a million times, is complexity, to see and navigate complexity. Well, what the heck does this mean? I'm going to give you a quick definition of complexity, and that is the connection between cause and effect. Can you see the connection between cause and effect ahead of time? Can you see it after the fact? Can you see it at all? Right? So I know that if I take my cup of water here and I were to drop it off the stage, we would all be able to say, yeah, Jessica, you dropped the cup and you spilled water all over the floor, right? The cause and effect is going to be abundantly clear. And a lot of what we deal with in the workplace is that straightforward. I can predict and gain agreement on, if I do a thing, here's what the effect is going to be, right? But a lot of things are more complex. Think about the pandemic. I'm not even sure that we even really still know how that pandemic started, right? Was it a wild animal? Was it a lab accident? We still, years after the fact, don't really have a shared narrative about how the pandemic started, do we? That is an example of complexity to the nth degree, right? We're after the fact, we don't agree, there are multiple interpretations between cause and effect. That's an example of where complexity is really, really high. So when we talk about being able to see and navigate complexity, the invitation is, can you start to think through the downstream consequences of any particular decision or action that might take place? Can you play the scenario out increasingly down the road and begin to plan or consider what you might do if A is going to B to B, B to C, whatever, right? So the invitation would be, whenever you're facing something that's challenging or not totally clear, step back. How big can you make the playing field? How much can you bring into your perspective or into your view to integrate that and start to think about what step 1, step 2, step 3 are going to be if you did A or you did B or you did C, okay? That's a little bit about what see and navigate complexity is. The second one here is the ability to take multiple perspectives. So I talked about how the person that's self-protecting is going to have not a great ability to think about somebody else, right? Until I get my suitcase up, it is all about me. It is all about me. As we grow vertically, our ability to solicit, appreciate, understand, and integrate the perspectives of other people grows. And so we need to cultivate this, or we can cultivate this by what? Asking people what they think. Trying to come up with solutions that integrate different perspectives to create a solution that's not just 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 maybe could be greater than 2? What does it look like to try and craft solutions that are better than the sum of their parts? This is really what taking and integrating multiple perspectives is about. It sounds so simple, but it's really hard to do when I come into the room and I think I'm the smartest person, right? Really hard to do. I had a coaching client once who was working on a major ERP implementation. She was a vice president of supply chain at a major retailer that you would all know. Some of you may be wearing their clothing. And she got on a coaching call with me one day and she said, "I'm so mad." I said, "All right, lay it on me, let's go." And she said, "I went to the ERP meeting, right, this cross-functional team that I'm on to lead this implementation, and we had all had like a homework assignment. We all had some work we needed to do from the last meeting." She goes, "Well, I did mine, and I created a whole process for it, and I've got spreadsheets, and like I came not only with a process to do the work, but my portion of the work was done." And I said, "Great, what happened?" She goes, "Well, no one else had even done any of their stuff yet." And I said, "Okay, what did you do?" She goes, "Well, I was really angry and I just left. I didn't do anything." I said, "Well, what are you worried about?" She goes, "Well, if I give them my spreadsheets and my process, they're just going to take it and do their work." I said, "Yeah." She said, "But then they're going to get credit for it and I won't. And I don't want them to get credit for my innovation and my work." And I said, okay, I hear you. I said, "But what do you think the implementation is for the ERP project?" And her eyes got really big and she went, "Oh." I said, "You're kind of slowing it down, aren't you? Is that really what's in best service to the company-wide initiative that you're helping to lead?" And she goes, "No, I guess it's not." I said, "Okay, well, what would be a different approach?" She goes, "Well, I guess I could share with them my process and even offer to help take some of their work off their plate. And I said, "Yeah." But she was in specializing, right? I have the answer, I did the thing, I solved the problem, and I'm not gonna let you get credit for it, right? I'm worried about you getting credit for it. That's a really great example of being able to get out of your own way, right? And then there was no curiosity either about why anybody else had not done their part of it, right? So there was not really an appreciation for the other perspectives who were in that room, let alone her own sort of contribution to things not going as well as they could, okay? So that's a little bit about taking multiple perspectives. The third one here is self-reflecting and adjusting, and I'm gonna add on increasingly in real time. Can I notice how I'm showing up? Can I notice the impact that that's having on people? Can I adjust my own thinking and my own behavior increasingly on the fly, faster and faster, so that I can become more effective in the environments that I'm in, right? That's what this is about. And this is really hard too. A lot of us don't enjoy thinking about ourselves and thinking about how we're showing up, right? I think about the chief strategy officer and how he basically, handed me my career on a platter and told me I was about to lose it all if I didn't figure out how to do better. That's really painful. I couldn't figure that out on my own. I had to have someone tell me. So the opportunity here is to begin to tune into ourselves, begin to be more honest with ourselves about where we are effective, where we are less effective, and to make those adjustments faster and faster. So we kind of start with after the fact, right? Can I start to move it to where I'm in the moment and I'm noticing how I'm doing, okay? I find this easiest to practice with my children because they don't have poker faces and they're not afraid to tell me when they think I'm dumb or stupid or not listening. And so it's a really great place to start to pay attention to how am I showing up and am I being effective is with my kids. And I fail so many times doing that, that really kind of helps get the flywheel going on this one. Anyone else have that experience with their children? I know I'm not alone. Yeah, all right, all the parents of teenagers probably raising their hands here, okay. And the last one here that I'm going to share with you is the capacity to hold opposing ideas simultaneously. So one of the tendencies that we have as human beings is to think that everything is a problem to be solved, and that once I solve that problem, it's never going to come back again, and I won't have to worry about it, and I'll be finished with it. But darn, a lot of those problems keep coming back around, don't they? It's really frustrating. That's because they're not problems to be solved. They are dilemmas to be managed. They are dilemmas to be managed. And so we call this polarity thinking, where I have two really important and good ideas that are in conflict with each other. So one of the big ones in corporate America is centralizing and decentralizing. So I'm sure that some of you, maybe in larger organizations, are dealing with this. I was having a conversation right before this with somebody who said, well, we have a new office in Eastern Europe and they're doing really well, but we're kind of like, how do we support them? How do we help them grow? This is a classic challenge around centralizing and decentralizing, right? Structure and flexibility is another one that is very present in the workplace. To what degree do we need to structure things and have a process around them? And to what degree can we allow flexibility and creativity? Neither one of those things is inherently good or bad by itself. They kind of need each other. But what do we do in organizations and in life? We go, it's all about structure, and we go hard over here. And we lose all the benefit of the other side of the equation. And then we're like, oh, this isn't really working anymore. And then we go hard to the other side. And really the answer is in the middle somewhere, right? And a constant sort of balancing and tweaking and adjusting of which way we need to go and which way we need to optimize. So when we say hold opposing ideas simultaneously, what we mean is to try to get the best of both sides of whatever the dilemma is that we're managing and minimize the downsides of both sides of that dilemma that we're managing, okay? So those are 4 ideas about how you can cultivate your own thinking in the vertical space. I am here at the end of my talk, so I hope this has been great. I'm gonna throw this up. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. My contact information is up there. We have a giveaway, so we are able to measure your stage of vertical development using an assessment. It's incredibly innovative and interesting, and I've got 2 of them to give away to you today. So if you have not given your business card or put a slip of paper in our jar, you've got 1 minute maybe to kind of do that. Any final ones that need to go in the jar to be in for the drawing? Okay, we'll make a quick tool around here, and I could probably take 1 or 2 questions. If anyone has one, yeah, we'll go back there. Go ahead and stand up and yell it. Okay.
You had a question?
I saw one back there. Or maybe that was to put your name in the hat. Okay, when name's in the hat. Does anyone have a question? No questions? Okay. All right. I think we needed a bigger jar. Yes. Yeah, Kelly Jo.
Okay, so having known you for a long time, right, and how powerful what you do is, what would you recommend if someone is in this room and wants to help get to their next stage? What are some of those steps that they should be doing individually in order to push themselves into that next stage, whatever that should be?
Yeah, great question. So let me repeat it in case you missed the first part. Kelly Jo's question is about if you want to sort of intentionally architect your development, what can you do? So I would encourage you to identify where you are, which stage do you think you're in most of the time. Nobody's in one stage all the time, but where do you think you are most of the time? And then read about the next stage using the material I've given you. I'm also happy to give you some more information on that if you reach out to me. But there are certain levers between each stage, right? So for example, if you're in specializing and you think that you might be more effective at performing, one of the things to do is to say, where can I engage other people to have a bigger impact? Where can I invite people in or leverage the expertise of other people more intentionally versus just relying on myself to do that? So there are sort of stage-specific development suggestions, Kelly Jo. And then these 4 that I just covered at the end here are general. They apply across all of the stages. So I would begin to say, where's the complexity? How can I see more of what's going on? Whose perspectives do I need to incorporate here? Is there a dilemma at play that I need to manage more intentionally or explicitly? Those would be some of the things I would offer. Yeah, great question. Okay, second one here, and then I think I'm out of time.
I think we have a lot
Yeah.
And if you look at this change, strategizing, transforming, internalizing, it can be lonely there from
Yes.
that perspective. But for everyone that's at director level, growing, and this is an amazing organization for that, do you have any advice in connecting with mentors within leadership teams at these organizations? How do you connect with that, what is it, distant and judgmental leadership group?
Yeah, so you are, I didn't mention this, but you're absolutely right. As people grow to the later stages of development, it can get a little bit lonely because you start to look at the world in a pretty different way than most people do. So it can feel lonely if that's you at that stage, and if you are at an earlier stage and you think you're looking at somebody that is at a later stage, it can feel like they're kind of far away or kind of weird, they're really different. What I would offer for the person who is there potentially is that connecting is you're spot on, right? One of the best things we can do to support our own development is to find somebody who we believe is further ahead on their journey than we are and attach ourselves to them, spend time with them, talk to them. So I have a handful of coaching colleagues that are at that late being and transforming stage, and I just like to listen to them. If I can just get on the phone or be in company with them and I just listen, I get so much out of it because it is a completely different worldview than where I'm at. And if you are at an earlier stage and you're potentially working for somebody who is at that later stage, do that. Spend time with them. Get curious about that different perspective. And know that if there's weirdness or whatever, that's not really about you, it's about them. Great question. Great question. All right, let's do a couple drawings really quick, and then I'm going to get out of the way so you all can go to your next session. All right, we're going to do 2 of these.
Found something bigger to mix them in.
Oh, great. Yeah, awesome. All right. First one is going to go to Emily Wisnant Beard at McGill. Where are you? Are you in the room?
Emily Beard.
Okay, I will follow up with you later. And the second one is going to be Rachel Stroop with TMP. All right, Rachel. All right, I'm going to email both of you with your assessment. Thank you so much, everybody. It was delightful to be with you this morning.
One more huge round of applause for Jessica. Thank you for getting our day started. This is just a small token of our
thank you very
appreciation
much.
for being here. Appreciate you so much.
And I'm going to take these.
Please.
Great.
That is
Okay.
bag.
Okay.
So apologies earlier, I did unintentionally misspeak. The handout was not yet in the app, but it will be.
Oh.
There are some extra copies on some of the empty tables up here, so please feel free to grab one. It will be uploaded to the app very soon. Thank you for your understanding.